Now with a title like that, I'm sure you're ready to come in here and tell me to get good scrub, or that I'm wrong, or I haven't played the game, or some dumb shit like that, so I ask you to please just hear me out on this. Before I begin, I want to clarify, I've beaten the game 4 times now with a Dex/Arcane build, and I've explored the world top to bottom and have recently started to experiment with different builds. I'm also guiding my girlfriend through the game for the first time and helping her get a good magic build going, so I feel like I know the game through and through. Also, by no means am I saying Elden Ring is a bad game. It's a really good game. I just think there are some things that they could have done a lot better when it comes to the design. I'm also aware this topic has been talked about already, but I also really wanted to weigh in on it and throw my 2 cents in because I'm very into the series and because I love Elden Ring. I just wanted to put this out there. When it comes to boss design, From Software has crafted some of the best bosses gaming has ever seen. With past entries like Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, and Sekiro, expectations for Elden Ring were at an all-time high. Naturally, veterans and newbies alike were excited to see what the bosses were going to be like in Elden Ring. And while fun the first time around, if you have the same opinion as I do, they feel like an absolute chore to get through unsubsequent playthroughs. And that's not to say the bosses are boring or low in quality or anything, they're just heavily imbalanced. You may ask how. For me to properly explain this, I'll have to share my own experience with past bosses. My first Souls game was Dark Souls 3, and while I'll always love that game, it forced me to adapt in a way I had never experienced before. The only boss I summoned help for in my first playthrough was for Pontiff. And after I beat him with those summons, I didn't get the same feeling of accomplishment that I got when I beat, say, the Abyss Watchers for the first time. I didn't feel like I beat him. I felt like me and the 2 NPCs I summoned beat him. So I toggled him again on New Game Plus, solo this time, and I got that satisfactory feeling again. Another example I'll use is when I beat Malenia for the first time and was struggling even with my Mimic tier. I finally beat her, and when I did, I didn't get that feeling of, oh fuck yeah, finally, fuck you bitch, kiss my ass. Instead, it was more like, oh, she's dead. Okay. So when it comes to Elden Ring, to say I hate using summons would be quite the understatement. And I don't want to sound like a hypocrite or like I'm shitting on anyone who does use them. I use them myself, and if you use them too, that's totally fine. It's a valid way to play the game. My problem is as described. When I summon someone or something in to help me beat a boss, I don't feel like I did it because I had help. And that's where Elden Ring's design falls for me. The bosses are so incredibly aggressive that it's hard to do much of anything during a fight. They don't give you enough time to heal or throw an attack. As soon as they're done with a combo, they start a new one entirely at will. In Dark Souls 3, this wasn't a problem. At the end of every combo, even if it was small, you still had a guarantee window to attack or heal. Even Black Flame Freda, who is arguably the most aggressive and agile boss for that game and combat style. The argument comes up for Bloodborne and Sekiro that their bosses are extremely aggressive too. The difference is that the game properly balanced the bosses and the combat together since they both have aggressive playstyles, so you yourself have to adapt to it. So nothing ever really feels unfair or like poor design. And that's where summons come in. Whether it be an NPC, a player, or Spirit Ashes, you have the option to summon someone or something for help, as you always have. The boss aggression is designed around summons, to split aggro between you and another thing or person. Now, while these summons are completely optional to use, the bosses in the way they're designed makes it feel like they're not. They might as well be required since it borders on being unfair if you don't use them.
So clearly, some people get great enjoyment from metagaming, and I think that's fine. What I don't think is fine is creating a difficulty so high that players who don't want to play this way feel forced to, or creating a difficulty so high that players aren't able to learn through perseverance anymore, or creating a difficulty so high that the cracks in the gameplay systems are exposed.
Using an early game example that people most commonly use, let's talk about Margit the Fell Omen. His recovery frames and combo chains, especially in his second phase, are outrageous. He can leap away at will and just chain an entirely new combo when you try to get a hit in on him or heal. He can also swing at you with a dagger so quickly that it's pretty much unreactable. Let's use another example from what is now probably considered the hardest boss in the entire series, Malenia. I know her and Waterfowl Dance have been talked about to death at this point, but I'd like to touch on it just for the sake of this video. Waterfowl is dodgeable if you're a melee player, it's just extremely difficult. First you have to run before she can close the gap on you, roll to your right, her left, then roll back. If you get hit a couple times, it's okay. The problem is, once her HP is in waterfowl territory, she can pull it out at will and she can gap close with it from outstanding range. A lot of people like to argue that you can use Bloodhound Step or use Freezing Pots for a cheese to knock her out of it or just teleport through the attacks. Me, personally, I don't like cheesing bosses in the same way I don't like using summons, so I never did that. I learned to dodge Waterfowl Dance, but that doesn't mean it's not a bullshit move. If she couldn't gap close with it from an absurd range, I think it'd be fine, honestly. I think her fight would also be more enjoyable, like most of the bosses in this game, if she was less aggressive and if she didn't lifesteal through shields. But anyway, I'm getting carried away. Let's get back to the aggression and unreactable tells that plague these bosses. This becomes a trend across all the bosses later in the game too. They have unreactable fast attacks, very quick recovery, lots of delayed attacks, especially in Horaloo, and lots of health and damage to boot. This doesn't mean that the bosses are unbeatable solo though, it's definitely possible, it's just a lot harder due to the heightened aggression, damage output, and massive health bar on these bosses. Now it wouldn't be such a problem if it was just plain hard, but like I said, it's balanced around summons. So fighting without them and having all that aggression on you with no windows to attack or heal, it feels like such a bullshit and unfair fight. Speaking of that, it's very odd to me that the Spirit Ashes can tank hits while in the late game you can die in 2 or 3 hits. It's absolutely ridiculous. What will take away half of your health bar will only take a fraction of health from your Mimic tier. Not only do bosses deal ridiculous damage in the late game, even basic enemies chunk away at your health for some absurd damage, specifically in the mountaintops of the giants. I had a friend who helped me along with my first playthrough with Elden Ring, and I told him about how absurd the damage output and HP bars are in the late game. He said he feels that it was designed that way due to how overpowered you can get in the game. I would agree if, for one, they didn't add the ancient hero of Zamor as a basic enemy, and 2, the mobs didn't chunk your health for a crazy damage output, and for third, practically every dungeon boss appears as a duo, just draining you entirely. Every time I replay Elden Ring, I have fun until it's time to go through the mountaintops. I absolutely dread the area because it's just not fun due to a poor design choice that plagues the game. I'm far from the only one that feels this way. And to reiterate, I'm not calling Elden Ring a bad game. It won Game of the Year, if that says something to you. It's fantastic. The open world is huge and amazing. It's fun. The bosses are engaging and fun, but they become less fun when you're forced to adapt to the design philosophy when it doesn't fit your playstyle, when FromSoft made every playstyle accessible in past titles. It all goes back to that sense of accomplishment feeling I mentioned earlier. I only got that feeling of overcoming the challenge from beating the bosses myself, not with any help. It felt rewarding, it felt engaging, and it made me want to play through the games again and again so I could get even more practice and get better. That sense of accomplishment is gone in Elden Ring. Using summons to get through the game, especially as a Dex/Arcane user, makes it so much easier. I don't feel like I ever got better at the game. I just found the best stuff and used that to the best of my ability. Elden Ring's bosses are a truly imbalanced disappointment, and it really takes away from what makes the game great. And like others have said, and with the recent announcement of DLC for Elden Ring, I hope FromSoft doesn't look at the success of Elden Ring, continue down this path, and have us fans watch their tragic fall from grace. So with all of that being said, if the point was to make the game easier for new players and force players already familiar with the series to adapt to a design philosophy that isn't completely optional, then I really only have one thing left to say. In Dark Souls, I rose up to Link the Fire. In Dark Souls 3, I rose up to Link the First Flame again. In Bloodborne, I rose up to ascend humanity into its next stage. In Elden Ring, my friends helped me rise up to become the Elden Lord. This was quite a tough video to make. I actually had contemplated on making it for a while, but I did just really want to put my 2 cents out there since I do adore FromSoft's past work, and I do love Elden Ring despite all of its flaws, and I still very much am excited for the DLC that's going to be coming out. Nevertheless, though, I am glad that I got it made, and I'm glad that it's getting out there, and hopefully you guys will, I don't know, maybe find some sort of catharsis in this like I did whenever I was making it. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Be sure to leave a like and do subscribe for more gaming content. And that'll do it for me. I'll see you guys in the next one.